Hello everyone, I'm so excited to be here. So I guess my third house trip didn't really work out, so I'm really happy to be here. I'd rather be here with you guys today versus with just not actually being here. So if you are joining me right now, that is amazing. You know, happy Saturday wherever you are around the world. And if you need an intro who I am, there's a video on that. I just prefer to get right into it. And today we're going to be talking about the third house. So talking about the third house, it's such a real, I feel like a lot of astrologers really speak badly around this area. And the reason being is it takes away from a dharma. And that's just who you really supposed to be on the path that you need to be. And the third house is, I feel like, is such an important house, and I feel like it gets talked down a lot bad about it. And I want to bring the pro about why it's so great. Can you tell I'm a little bit biased about this? And I'll tell you why. So number one thing is about the third house. I feel like it's the area of your creativity. Your mind, it's where your mind, your ideas really comes out to. And that's about personal integrity, encouragement, and I feel like that's where it is. By the way, the third house, the body represents the neck, the shoulder, the hands. You know, before I started astrology, which is very interesting here, I was very curious about prajna. And if you don't know what prajna is, same thing as hori. And if you don't know what that means, it just means when you ask the question, you're able to answer based on predictions. And I was really excited about a skill like that somebody could do that. So I jumped on it. I tapped into my 8th house really in a way that is very good, and then work on my investigation. So those are the skills and the ability and the habits that you have and how you carry yourself. I feel like that's a really powerful place to be in. Yeah, so when you you know, here's a really interesting, what got me interested in this, you know, the neck and all that part in prajna. I find that when people get injuries or have some sort of health issue, or I can make certain things I've noticed in my client, if they were been abused and where and what was a sign of abuse and things like that. I feel like that's where it's happening. So hands is hitting, right? So you can see things like that. You know, the third house also represent sibling, co-worker, other individual peers. For instance, fellow managers or even students sometime in the classroom. And this is really where I really inspire, you know, I really have a strong place in here. We also test ideas completing with determine who is an ally and who may be an enemy. You can see careers for example, writer, athlete, games, fun, stimulation, pursuing personal desires. That's hobbies. So if you feel you know, if you're stressed out, I feel like a lot of my clients, if they have a really strong third house, I would go tap into your hobbies, tap into your interests. And I think that's a much more healthier way than hurting yourself or feeling in a way that is not empowering initially. So that's where the third house in the, for example, environment places that could be encounter is workshops, casinos, athlete field, classrooms, the bar sometime in that as well. And a place where you have a really good time, really, that's where it is. So those are an environment factor that you can count upon. So objects would be computer, pens, video games, weights, you know, weightlifting, you know, karaoke machines, interestingly enough, electronics, and those are the really, I feel objects. You know, really interesting enough that it also represent media, yeah, writing, journal, books and stuff like that. Media is really, so if you have a strong third house, you can be a coder, writer, things like that. Planet that indicates this area obviously is third house always represent Gemini, and so that's ruler of Mercury. So very curious, and it's good for communication as well. So I feel like this is where the lesson is about personal happiness, and that's where your hobbies and interests. I realize that, you know, if you do not have a skill, how are you going to perform in your job? And that's where I feel this is where the talent comes in. If you don't know, like for example, if fitness is not a big factor, it has to do with your third house sometime, and you can see yourself as an athlete in this area. I feel like for myself, I can represent that I'm also an athlete myself, so that's why my third house is very strong in this area. And you know, and that's where it is. Let me quickly see if anything else that I have missed. Yeah, so we talked about family, we talked about environmental, we talked about, oh yeah, so this is also an area establish like boundaries and grow and flow and test belief and experiment. This is where your third house. So the higher wisdom beyond satisfying the desire of the moment. That's a big one as well. So that's testing that, the skills and ability. The ego is an agency which can be separated at times, but not really. You know, if you have a really strong third house, you know, this is a type where you can be very competitive to other people, and your competitor who tests themselves. And as well, our sibling is another big factor, could be in that area. So we can't, you know, if you don't have a strong third house, you can be fighting with your siblings. And so we all have siblings of some sort, or if it's not like a close friend, and that will be as well. So another factor of this area is, you know, I don't want to be talking about planets here. It's just less confuse you as well. I really feel like the third house really represent the mentality, incline of the person, ability to memorize. So it's really interesting enough, you know, I'm sitting here trying to memorize exactly what the third house is and recall exactly what I have experienced with the third house, as well as recalling what I've learned and what I've seen through my clients as well. And so because the ninth house obviously represent higher education, research, philosophy, tendency, and wisdom and all that part, I feel like the third house is because it's like opposite from each other, and seventh from, you know, the third is really the ninth. The third house is very as courage. Courage is a one for sure. Courage and firmness is a big factor here. So we get into characters. So, you know, I talked about short traveling a little bit there, and we talked about like it's for if you are seeing this like potentially if there's a planet there, or even through a transit, you could be traveling. So when I say small travel, like today I was supposed to be doing a small travel. I was supposed to get on a boat and travel to another island and support my partner, but I made a decision not to go because I really wanted to be here. That's what I really told him. So the really third house can also influence like bus, you know, rail, cycling. Those are the things as well. I also represent like other characters like post office, letter box, radio report, signal, and you know, and television, telecommunication. Those are the big factors that involve that house as well. So, you know, you can actually be an area of, you know, journalist, a messenger, a mediator, which is interesting. Also a reporter, a news, journalism, and information of office, a reporter. If you are watching this, please let me know if you are any of these job position, and if you know your chart based under the tropical, and let me know. You can actually tell me down below if that's true. The third house also indicates change of residence. So restlessness is another one. So transitioning, change, movement, library, books, bargains, signs, contracts, signals. Also represents signature. So it's a good when you actually be signing a document. So I see that in Prajna as well. So the body part, we talked about shoulder, arms, and bones. Did we talk to bones? Yeah, so I meant like bones, like collar bones. Nervous system does represent arms, you know, like I would say like right ear. So if anything in the body part, so if you're having a ringing sensation, and that's where it represents the third house. And so that may also indicate as well you wearing earrings or a necklace and things like that. So I feel like that's where it is. If you want to get me, if you want me to talk about like Nasratra, I'm happy to do that. If my Sanskrit is not that strong, I'm still working on that place. So yeah, so I feel like I have covered quite a bit, and if you are in this area, let me know what your thoughts on, you know, if you are in this area of like being a journalist, things like that, what you have experienced your third house, and how the third house of Gemini represent for you, if it has helped you in your career in those area. And so, you know, I really believe in like sometimes you don't need an astrologer to tell you who you are and what you represent. And so, you know, I try to come up with questions to help you understand who you are. So in order to, when you understand better about yourself, you can actually be able to communicate that with your partner. And this is why I created this you know, this channel as well. So for example, how do you, you know, you best state your case with others? How often you actually love the most? And will our action be true to our environment and, you know, as well as the planet of all times? This spring also form emerging form of intelligent gatherings such as computers, and hello, I'm here with you. Will they make you break the communication that we know as? So the question really provides the answer about the third house by listening into your third house and think in the process and the share. So how often are you on the internet? How often do you speak? Do you have, what do you really represent yourself in the area of your communication, and how do you communicate, and what are your hobbies? I'm really interested in knowing that. So if you're considered, like a lot of people notice you're really talented, I want you to actually leave me a comment based on what kind of talent are you specialize in, or consider yourself to be an expert in that area, or you know, you are very interested in those hobbies. It could be knitting or anything like that. So I really want to hear where you are in this area. So that being said, I'm gonna conclude. Sometime I do get questions here, and I want to know if that might be the case. If you have any question in this area, I love to hear that from you. We can talk about planets, and I want to hear what also you want to learn about Vedic astrology as I continue on this journey. So it's really exciting time for that. So for now, I want to conclude this video. I'm so excited to be here with you guys, and I will see you next week talking about the fourth house. All right, I'll see you then. Bye.